So, this is the story of David the skeleton. David was a leading physicist. He was one of the first doctors in physics in his field, or yeah, right off after the Manhattan Project when people started realizing physics had value. And he was a very driven man, pushed to all sorts of different accomplishments and honorifics. But, as it does with all of us, time came for him, and when he was about 80, he died of a heart attack and was interned in a mausoleum a few hours out of his hometown. Eventually, he was forgotten by the world. His kids had stopped visiting and then succumbed themselves, and little was left of him other than a tombstone and whatever was left in family trees and government documents. But his rest was not to last. After several decades, eventually the crypt he was interned in began to crack, and rays of sun began streaming over the body. And on one fateful day, the first light of dawn reanimated his body, and Dever was given life once more as a skeleton. But the world isn't really built for skeletons, and without his field or any connections to the mortal world, he was left to wander aimlessly. Um, Finding a road near the cemetery he was entombed in, he set off to the west, walking for 2 hours, and then at which point he came to a fork in the road heading directly south, which eventually brought him to the town of Blaufeld. And while entombed, he developed quite a thirst, as he hadn't drinking anything in many years. So, upon sighting the first restaurant that he recognized, he waddled in and sat himself down at what he would later find to be a Denny's. Unfortunately, the waitress was not particularly accepting, directing him to a sign on the door that said, "No shirt, no skin, no service." So once again, he was left to meandering Blofeld. Um, this time with the cause of finding something to make him more palatable to the people of the town. So he stumbled into an abattoir where he sort of built himself a body with the various cow products that were being processed there. So he covered himself in hamburger and covered that in unprocessed leather. So now, with skin, albeit not human skin, he returned to Denny's just as the last crew was leaving for the day. He begged them to let him back in so he could finally get his coffee, but they didn't really want to discuss this with a leather-covered skeleton. So David was once again left devoid of any sort of purpose. So he decided this town really wasn't for him, and he set out back for his crypt, resolving to find someplace less discriminatory in the morning. As he headed back up north, he passed the familiar crossroads, the moon now hanging high in the sky. Um, and a voice called out to him, "Why so sorrowful, little one?" And David turns around and sees none other than the devil creeping out from a copse of trees around where the road split. Um, and David says to the devil, "Well, I don't know what to do with myself, but I need to interact with the realm of the living." And the devil returns to the devil, "Well, I will give you new life and a new body, but it will cost your soul." David considers this for a moment and is like, "Sure. I mean, I'm a zombie. I basically don't have a soul anyway. Like, what could it hurt?" And so the devil snaps his fingers, and in a flash of green light, the hamburger and leather twists around him, and he is turned into a cow. And once again, breath fills his chest. But given that he is in the outskirts of a town that processes cow meat, he's assumed to just be an escaped member of the slaughterhouse and is summarily rounded up, and the devil gets his soul. Thanks.
In the early 1940s, David took over as one of the leads on the Manhattan Project and remained there until the end of the Second World War. Time wasn't so kind to David as he passed away from a heart attack at only 80 years old. Following his death, his body was kept in a mausoleum as instructed by his remaining family. The mausoleum, like David, was not immune to time as the structure began to crack and crumble. David's body was once again exposed to external natural forces, resurrecting the decayed remains of what was once David. The only thing that came to David's mind immediately was the excruciating dry thirst that developed over many decades. David arose from his resting spot and walked his way out of the chamber and out into the real world once again. He entered a local Denny's restaurant and sat down like it was just any other day. The waitress, without saying a word, pointed at a sign saying, "No shirt, no skin, no service." David noted that she seemed almost annoyed when presented with his vile, decayed appearance, almost as if dead men walking was a regular occurrence in this town. Knowing he won't make it far without new skin, David raided a cattle slaughterhouse and collected meat to fill out missing pieces from his body. On his way out, David grabbed sheets of leather to use as his new skin. Once again, David entered the Denny's restaurant and was confronted by the same frustrated yet disinterested waitress from before.
Oh, it's you again.
Now that I am skinned, I would like to just sit down and order some coffee.
Not looking like that, you're not. We don't want to see your kind back in here again.
David, still with his unquenched thirst and feeling unimaginably lethargic, just turned around and walked away. For hours, David stumbled around, pondering what his existence had become, as not even death could relieve this suffering. As David made his way down a dirt road that bordered the local slaughterhouse, a voice came out of the darkness outside of David's poor vision.
What's got you feeling down, David? I don't know what happened to me. I should have stayed dead. This world is no place for my kind. Well, I may have a solution for you, David. I felt your kind before. The only thing I require is your soul, that I may relieve you from this endless pain. Who are you? Why should I believe you? I've gone by many names, David, but you can call me Satan. A very easy name to remember, I'd imagine. I was there for your work all those years ago. All the death you helped to bring about. I was really impressed with how vile you were towards your own kind. That's why I wanted to free you from all this. And all it'll cost me is my soul, huh? That's all. It's not like you're gonna drop dead anytime soon. Well, you, sir, have a deal. You may have my soul. Now make me live again. Oh, it's my pleasure, David.
David suddenly felt the man's presence drain out, eager to see what would happen next. Suddenly the leather that wrapped around David began to shift. His body began to contort with a tremendous amount of pain as he fell over on all fours. Suddenly it occurred to David what was happening. He was transforming into a cow, just like the ones kept in the slaughterhouse less than a mile down the road. The fear began to set in when he saw a pair of workers in a truck approaching from the dirt road. Hey, it looks like one got out. Let's bring him in. Be our last kill for the night.
In the early 1940s, a man named David worked on the Manhattan Project up until the end of the Second World War. After that, he lived on until he died at the age of 80, and he was put into a mausoleum, and he decayed in the mausoleum for a long time until external forces caused him to become a zombie again. Then he tried to go to a Denny's because he was really thirsty, and when he walked in, he was met by an annoying lady. "No shirt, no skin, no service." Why's that? "Just 'cause." He decided to walk out. He went to the nearest cattle ranch and got some meat to fill in the missing pieces of his flesh. On his way out, he grabbed some leather and used it to make a new skin for himself. Then, he went back to the Denny's and was met by the same tired, shrill voice. "Oh, it's you again." And she didn't seem to want him there again, so he left. And he walked into the darkness and was met by a voice coming from the darkness. "Hey, you there." "What? Who is it?" "It's Satan, and I can help your kind. I've helped it before. All I need is your soul." "What will you do for me?" "I'll make you live again as a normal being." He agreed and gave Satan his soul. Unfortunately, he felt the shifting of his leather over his body and wondered what was that. And then all of a sudden he realized he was turning into a cow. Slowly in the distance, he heard the rumbling of an engine, and as it got closer, he heard two voices. "Oh, looks like one escaped. Let's take him back in. Last kill of the night."
So there was this dude that worked on the Manhattan Project in like the 1940s, and then he worked till it was like past World War II. And then he died, and they buried him in a mausoleum until he decayed, and then some like weird force made him like a zombie again. But when he became a zombie, he got hungry, so he went to a Denny's, and this bitchy waitress was like, "No shirt, no skin, no service," because he was like decayed and rotted and stuff. Whew! And so then he went looking for a new skin, and then he went to a cow farm, and he killed one of the cows and used it to fill in all like the holes in his flesh and stuff like that. It was really fucking gross. And then he went back to the Denny's where the bitchy waitress was still being bitchy to him, and so he decided to leave because no one talks to baby like that. And then he was wandering around, and they heard a voice. It was Satan, and Satan was like, "Hey, I'll give you life again, but you have to give me your soul." And the guy's like, "Huh, okay." And then he felt the shift, and then he got reincarnated as a cow, and then the farmers found him, or the ranch hands found him, and then they made him into beef. And it's so stupid. This story is stupid.
Okay, so there was once this nuclear scientist working on the Manhattan Project back in like the 40s, and then he died. So after he died, he was like put in a mausoleum, and then he undied. So he gets up. He's a zombie now. He gets up out of his mausoleum, and he wants to get some Denny's because he's had a long sleep. And so and that's where you go after you have a long sleep and you wake up and it's like you feel like shit. You go and get some Denny's because there's the only place that's fucking open. Anyway, so he's a zombie now. He goes to Denny's and he goes in and tries to order some Denny's. And the waitress is like, "No, no shirt, no skin, no service." So he fucks off because he's a zombie. He has no skin. So he goes to get some skin. He goes to a cow farm and he takes a cow and he just fucking brutally skins it. And he takes the skin and he drapes it over his own and he goes back to the fucking Denny's. And then the waitress says, "No skin, no service." Because apparently the skin of the cow only, because it wasn't his skin, it only counts as a shirt. But he still has no skin. So no service. So he leaves again, and then he as he's leaving, he meet Satan, and so he makes a deal with Satan. Satan offers him a skin, and he says, "Sure, I'll take the skin." And Satan says, "Great, I want your soul." So he says, "Yeah, sure." And he takes the skin, and Satan takes the soul, and bam, here. And so he just poof, he wakes up, and he has the skin he wants now. He has the cow skin as his own skin because he is a cow on the cow farm, and then he gets killed for beef. Rip Grandma.
Okay, hey all you cool cats and kittens. So like there's this nuclear scientist, right? And he dies. And then he comes back to life because of nuclear science. And then because he comes back to life, there's a mausoleum too. That's where he goes. But then he comes out of it because he's tired of it. So he comes out and he's like, damn, I need a good breakfast slam. At Denny's. So he goes to Denny's. And he's like, waitress, can I have the breakfast slam? And the waitress is like, no, you're dead. No skin, no shoes, no shirt, no service. And he's like, damn, I want the breakfast slam. So he goes out of the Denny's and he's sad. Alright. Then he finds a local cow farm and he's like, there's some skin. And he goes take some cow skin, as one does. He puts it on himself and he goes back in the Denny's and he's like, hello waitress, can I have that breakfast slam now, please? And the waitress is like, no, that's not your skin, sorry. He's like, damn, it's not my skin, it's cow skin. So he leaves the Denny's again. And then he meets Satan in the parking lot. And Satan's like, you want some skin? He's like, yeah, I want some skin. He's like, yeah, sure, but I need your soul. He's like, done, deal, take it. Satan, waves his magic witch finger at him. And instantly the cow skin becomes his skin. And now his cow skin and like a cow pattern penis and the whole deal, And he goes back in the Denny's and gets his breakfast slam. And I think he dies. I don't really remember. That's it.
Alright. So, there's this nuclear scientist. And he dies doing nuclear stuff. But then he comes back to life because nuclear stuff happened. And so what happens is when he wakes up, he's all hungry. So he leaves his mausoleum or whatever and he goes to Denny's. So, at the Denny's, he asks the waitress, can I get a big breakfast slam? And the waitress said, no, of course not. You don't have any skin. No skin, no shoes, no shirt, no service. So, the scientist is like, well, damn. So he leaves. He finds a farm around the location. He gets the skin from the cow and puts it on himself and goes back to Denny's and tries again. The waitress is like, well, that's not your real skin, so no. So he's like, well, shit. So then he leaves. He goes to the parking lot and he sees Satan. Satan says, so you want skin? And the scientist is like, yeah. So Satan's like, alright, I'll give you skin, but you're gonna need your soul. And the scientist's like, alright. And then, Satan gives him skin, but it's just a cow skin. So now he's like a cow-skinned human or whatever with all the cow stuff and like a cow penis and And he goes back to Dane and tries again. And this time it works. And then he gets his big breakfast slam.
So, there's this nuclear scientist and he dies because of nuclear stuff. And then he comes back to life. And then when he wakes up, he's hungry. So then he goes to Denny's. And then he asks for a big breakfast slam, and then the waitress is like, no. And then because you don't have a skin. And then he's like, oh, okay. Then he goes and he takes the skin off a cow. And then he goes back to Denny's. Then he's like, is this okay? And then the waitress is still like, no. And then he goes and gets skin from Satan, except he has to make a deal with Satan, except Satan's like, well, you have to give me your soul. So then he gives Satan his soul, and then he gets his cow parts, except it's not just the skin, it comes with like the cow, the hooves, the horns, mouth. And then he goes back to Denny's and he finally gets his meal.
So there was this nuclear scientist who died from nuclear stuff, and when he woke up, he was hungry and went to Denny's and asked for a big breakfast lamb. But the waitress was like, no, you need a skin. So he went and got a cow skin and then went back to Denny's, but the waitress was still like, no. So he decided to go to Satan to get a skin. But Satan told him he had to first sell him his soul. So he sold his soul, and then Satan gave him not only the cow skin, but all the parts of the cow, like the cow's hooves and all of that. And then he finally went back to Denny's and was able to get his meal.